in Mago Reddit. Today's story is...
My stepsister trashed my house and refused to pay for the damage, but instant karma taught her and her narcissistic mother a lesson they will never forget. Recently, I, 32, female, had to hire my stepsister to look after my children for a day because I had an important meeting with a client. I left home at 7 in the morning and returned at around midday the following day. My stepsister Janine is 17, and my two little ones are 8 and 6. My daughters are quite introverted by nature, so they are not difficult to look after. It seemed like a simple task, and I trusted Janine because she offered to help me after I called my father. My usual babysitter canceled at the last minute due to personal issues, and this client was extremely important for my company, so I was in a difficult situation. I called my father to ask him if he could look after the girls for a day, leaving them at his house, but unfortunately, he also had plans to go out with his friends. Then Janine overheard our conversation and offered to look after my daughters. I was a bit hesitant because, honestly, I don't have a close relationship with her or her mother. My father married Janine's mother 2 years ago after dating for 3, and by then I was an adult and had been living on my own for a long time. I never spent much time with them, we just had a cordial and formal relationship, nothing more. Since I had no other options, I decided to accept her offer, especially since she said she would look after the girls for free. She seemed sincere on the phone, so I trusted her and left my daughters in her care. I checked on them a couple of times during the day, but after the meeting I was exhausted, so I went to bed early. The next day, I returned home as planned. When I arrived, I began to feel that something was not right. As soon as I parked in the driveway, Janine hurried out of the house. She gave me back the keys and practically ran off. I knew immediately that something was wrong because she left before I could even go inside. And sure enough, as soon as I entered, I saw that my house was completely trashed. I am well off and I own many beautiful things, but everything was dirty and messy when I returned. I didn't even recognize my own living room, and that was just the beginning. Every room in my house had been treated the same way, and although I am no longer a teenager, I perfectly recognized the signs of a high school party. My daughters welcomed me, and fortunately their room was intact. When I spoke to them, they simply confirmed what I had already discovered. They told me that throughout the previous night, Janine had locked them in their room and only opened the door to give them dinner and snacks. She left them with a tablet to keep them entertained and kept them locked up for the rest of the night. They told me that Janine had invited many friends over and had given my daughters sweets and soft drinks while she and her friends organized a party. Obviously, my daughters were happy because they didn't understand the seriousness of the situation, but I was furious. The worst part was that when I went through my belongings, I discovered that many had been irreparably damaged. There were stains all over my sofa and carpet. The wallpaper was scratched, some of my more fragile decorative objects were broken, and they had simply been pushed into a corner. It was a total mess, so it wasn't just a matter with my daughters, but also the damage that she and her friends had caused to my house. I immediately called my father and told him everything. He was as upset as I was. While we were talking on the phone, he confronted his stepdaughter about it. Janine tried to deny everything, but it was useless because I had all the evidence in front of me. Besides, my daughters had already told me the truth, so there was no way out of this situation. I was very upset, and so was my father. I even did some damage assessment and told him that this would cost them around $5,000 because they would definitely have to pay me. It's not that I couldn't afford to replace the things on my own, but it's the principle of the thing. My father assured me that he would make sure that Janine paid, because it was the only way to make her understand that what she did was wrong. It seemed fair and reasonable to me, but since then, his wife and Janine have been playing the victim card about how cruel we are being. Now the money will come out of Janine's pocket, and when she can't pay anymore, her mother will have to cover the rest. I don't think it's unfair, but they argue that it's a lot of money. They say that as a family, we should forgive and forget, but I don't really consider them my family. And even if I did, I don't think I could overlook something like this. It's an important issue for me, and I think they're being unfair by victimizing themselves, not only with me, but also with my father, because they've been bothering both of us about this. So, am I the idiot for demanding that my father's wife and my stepsister pay me for the damage they caused to my house? Edition. Hi. To answer everyone's questions about why I couldn't find someone else to look after my daughters. First, it was Saturday and all my friends were busy. I can't expect them to cancel their plans to give me priority no matter how close we are. It would be unfair. As for my husband, I don't have one. Unfortunately, I lost my husband in a car accident 2 years ago, and since then, his family has not kept in touch with me either. My mother lives in another state, so obviously I couldn't ask her. I didn't really think about it much. It was a last-minute decision because I was desperate to find a babysitter. Before all this, I had always thought of Janine as a sensible girl. We were never close, but I had never had any bad experiences with her that would make me hesitate to hire her as a babysitter. As I mentioned, we had a formal and cordial relationship, and we got along well enough, so I didn't imagine that something like this could happen. That was my mistake, and I have learned my lesson. That's all I can say about it for now. Update 1. A week has passed since my original post. I decided to talk to my father about his wife's and stepdaughter's behavior because after my father told them they had to pay for the damage, they started sending me messages constantly trying to make me feel guilty. I'm pretty sure the atmosphere at their house has also been very tense. They maintained this attitude for 3 or 4 days, but in the last few days I hadn't heard from them. However, they hadn't deposited any money into my account either, so I was confused about what was going on. For the last 2 days, even my father had been distant, so I decided to call him today. When he answered, he immediately apologized for being so uncommunicative. He explained that things at home had been very bad these days, and that he had not been available mainly because he was trying to manage the chaos at home. As talking to me had been useless, Janine and her mother had set about presenting themselves as victims as best they could, even though they were not. For the last 2 days, Janine and her mother had been arguing with him about every moment he spent at home. I had to listen to them complain, shout, and rant, doing their best to paint me as the villain of the story. They have been accusing him of always taking my side, prioritizing me, and never caring enough about them. I don't understand where that comes from, because for as long as they have known me, I have been an adult who has never lived with them. I was almost 30 when they became part of my father's life. I was living alone, I was already a mother and a wife, and I have always been quite independent. This accusation that my father prioritizes me over them doesn't even make sense. How could he do that, even if he wanted to? I have never asked him for money. I have never stayed longer than necessary when I visited him. We have separate lives. The only thing we try to do is have lunch or dinner together, just the 2 of us and my daughters, at least 2 or 3 times a month. This has been our ritual for a long time, even before he met them. It has nothing to do with them, and I think it's the least we can do as a father and daughter. I think their accusations are extremely unfair, and they are just trying to cover themselves. They are looking for an excuse to make us look like the bad guys so they don't have to pay. I'm not going to let that happen. When my father told me what they were saying, I told him it was time for me to talk to them myself, because I can't let them behave like that and get away with it. They have no right to say such things about us, especially when they are the ones to blame. I wanted to give them a piece of my mind, but my father asked me to let him handle the situation because it was a delicate one. He asked me to give him a few days to try to resolve it himself. If that didn't work, then I could step in, because in the end, it's my money that's at stake. No matter what is going on between them, it is not fair for me to keep waiting, and he knows that what they are doing now is just trying to delay the inevitable. Update 2. It has been 4 days since my last update, and I have kept in touch with my father. I know he is having a hard time dealing with his wife and Janine, so I have been calling him every night to make sure he is not too stressed out. I know he's trying to be strong in front of me, but he's suffering. They've been arguing nonstop, and I really feel bad for him, to the point where I thought about ending it all by just forgetting about it. Money is not an issue for me. It was just the principle that bothered me. But if my father is suffering so much, I don't want it to go on like this. I told him I could talk to his wife and Janine to withdraw my claim and resolve the problem, but he and I are very similar, and he told me it would be a temporary solution. This is not something that can be resolved like that. They need to recognize that what they are doing is wrong. Janine must take responsibility for being irresponsible the day I left her in charge of my house and my daughters. Until that happens, he can't allow me to take back what we said and pretend that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. He was right, so I didn't know what else to say. I've just been trying to support him. I know he's been sleeping in the spare room. He's not a confrontational person, he's not good at shouting and arguing or getting upset emotionally. He likes to resolve things in a civilized manner, and I know he can't compete with Janine and her mother at the moment, because they are the exact opposite of him. They like to shout and impose themselves. This is overwhelming for my father, and it is frustrating for me not to be able to be there to defend him. But I know that would only make the situation worse. I have been trying to let him handle this as he wants. I've decided that if this goes on for a few more days, I will suggest that he talks to a lawyer. I can't believe that Janine and her mother are making such a fuss about $5,000, which is all they have to pay me for the unauthorized party they organized at my house. I find it strange that this woman is willing to risk her whole life as she knows it, her marriage and her relationship with my father, for just $5,000. They are so desperate to prove that they are right that they don't mind losing so much in the process. They don't seem to care that they are hurting my father. It's strange that they can treat someone they claim to love like that. If I were in that position, even if I believed I was not wrong, I would have moved on just because I didn't want to keep hurting someone I love. My father has always tried to be a good husband since he couldn't be that for my mother, and they ended up getting divorced when I was 6. He and I have always been very close, and he confided in me that this time he wanted to do it right. I know it means a lot to him, and that's a big part of the reason why he hasn't given up on them yet. But looking at the situation, I don't think they value it in the same way that he values them. It's really sad. I don't want him to go through this, and it's terrible that I'm playing such an important role in this conflict. But there's really nothing I can do. If they want the relationship to work, they'll have to realize that what they've done is wrong, acknowledge their mistake, and make amends. But right now, I don't think that's going to happen. They seem very reluctant to change their position, and I think they would rather lose him than have this discussion. Of course, I can't tell my father that, because he still has hope, and for his sake, I hope things work out. I know he really loves his wife, and I want him to be happy. I don't know what else to say. I hope they come to their senses soon and resolve this situation. I hope they do the right thing. For now, I'm staying out of it. If this continues, I don't see how it will work out for them. I feel bad, but I may have to advise my father to talk to a lawyer, even if they manage to work things out. I don't think I can ever look at Janine and her mother in the same way again, because they have lost all my respect. Update 3. It's been a week since my last update. Today, my father showed up at my house after work with his bags. My daughters were thrilled to see their grandpa, but I knew something had gone very wrong, as I mentioned in my previous update. I had been in touch with him and calling him every day to assess the situation. Even last night, he had told me that things were under control. He assured me that he had been talking to his wife and Janine, and although they had been shouting before, they were now responding more civilly. He really believed that they could sort things out and that I would get my money back soon. At this point, I wasn't even worried about the money. I had already paid for everything out of my own pocket, and I was just hoping this would be over soon so the money wasn't a priority. But it's the principle that matters, and both my father and I knew that, so even though it wasn't that important, it was still significant. Last night, from the way he spoke, I thought things were finally coming to a conclusion. Although I wasn't sure if Janine and her mother were ready to apologize, I was glad that at least my father believed that things were going to improve. But today, when he arrived, he looked exhausted and haggard. I hadn't seen him for several days because I was busy with work and the situation at home, so we hadn't had a chance to see each other. He looked very different from the last time. After playing with the girls, we talked, and he told me that although Janine and her mother had been behaving reasonably well in recent days, leading him to believe that they could work things out, they had had another big argument today. This time, she had decided to leave home. He told me that the situation was getting out of control and that today they had crossed a line. He was no longer sure he wanted to continue with these people. He told me he was willing to talk to a lawyer because at this point, there was no going back. At first, he didn't want to tell me what had happened. He avoided the subject, but I finally convinced him, and boy, they really are terrible people. I can't believe they're prioritizing $5,000 over my father, but honestly, it's their loss. What happened was that today, as he thought things were going well with them, he mentioned the $5,000 they owed me. He kindly tried to point them in the right direction, suggesting that they contact me to make some arrangement about the payment. Suddenly, Janine started shouting at her, saying that she couldn't believe that even after they had tried to talk to him nicely, he still brought that up. Her mother decided to take his side no matter how wrong she was. She said she was convinced that he would never change and that he would always choose me over his family. When he tried to defend himself by saying that I am his family too, they started shouting even louder. They started insulting me, they insulted him and accused him of being selfish and stingy. Even though he is the one who spends the most money in their household, Janine is a teenager and really can't afford anything, but her mother, although she works, doesn't contribute much financially. Fortunately, my father has his own well-established business, so money is not a problem for him. But anyone can see that his wife and Janine struggle to protect their own finances, while expecting him to pay for everything, even though they are perfectly capable of financing themselves. My father does it out of love, so he has never presented it as a favor. But this time, when they accused him, he decided to defend himself by mentioning this, and they obviously didn't like it. They didn't like that he didn't keep quiet about this behavior, so they intensified their verbal attacks, and after a while the situation became so stressful that my father decided to pack up and leave. Even as he was packing, they were saying terrible things about me, about my mother, whom they have never met in person, and about my father. I don't want to repeat that kind of language, but it was horrible. Obviously, he couldn't stand that lack of respect and decided to leave. Now he has said that he will file for divorce because obviously he can't go back after how they treated him today. I told him he doesn't need to come back. He is completely welcome to stay here for as long as he needs to. And if he needs my help to get them out of that house, I'll make sure that happens too. But he told me he just wants to stay away from them and doesn't want to be involved with them in any capacity. So I'm just trying to make it easy for him at the moment. He's really affected, but I'm glad he's leaving them because they really deserve it. I don't even want that money back. $5,000 isn't that much for me. They can have it. Update 4. It's been 3 weeks since my dad moved in with me, and it's been nice having him around. He's been working from home, so he's been looking after the girls when they get back from school, and he's been doing all the pickups and drop-offs. It's really fun having him here, and we've been reminiscing a lot about my childhood. Most importantly, the girls are delighted. They've always adored Granddad, and now that they have him full-time, they're constantly around him, which is a break for me too. Things have been quite normal and pleasant for us, but it hasn't been the same for his wife and Janine. I managed to convince him to talk to a lawyer, even though he had been putting it off. I told him he had to end this situation, and that worked. He spoke to the lawyer, we filed for divorce, and a couple of days ago they were finally notified. As I expected, as soon as they received the notification, she started contacting him again. But even now I didn't think he should apologize. She kept accusing him of exaggerating and saying that they could still talk things through, go to marriage counseling, and try to work it out. Even now she was trying to make it seem like he was the problem, saying that she knew I had pushed him into this. I don't care if she thinks that. I definitely encouraged him to make this decision because I want the best for my father. He's not getting any younger, and I don't want him to be trapped in a situation with people who clearly don't care about him. They don't respect him, they don't even love him, and frankly, they don't deserve him. So yes, if you think I'm trying to meddle in this situation and control it, I am. I don't care what you think. I know this is for the best, and all my life my father has protected me. He has given me the best I could ask for. So now, as his daughter, it is my duty to protect him too. I think I'm doing a good job of that, so I'm happy with my decision. Update 5. It's been a month since my last update, and the divorce proceedings have begun. My father is still staying with us, but fortunately he managed to get his soon-to-be ex-wife and Janine to vacate the house that actually belongs to him. She is demanding an outrageous amount of alimony, so they are trying to come to an agreement about that. Other than that, they don't really have many joint assets. Alimony is the only point of contention at the moment, but I'm sure his lawyer will sort it out. He's very good at his job. The last time he saw his future ex-wife and Janine was a couple of weeks ago, when he had to pick up the house keys. Even then, they were terrible to him. They told him he was making a big mistake and that he would regret it for the rest of his life. And of course, they attacked me too. But my father didn't care. He told me that he is happier now than he had been before. He told me about several warning signs that started to appear just after they got married, but he had ignored them because he loved this woman. What happened to me turned out to be what he needed to take the blindfold off. He is glad he chose to get divorced because he wants to spend the rest of his life in peace. So I think this is the best thing for all of us. I'm happy, my father is happy, and so are the girls. And that's all I care about, honestly.